مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is an introduction to 4 surahs of the Quran to enable us to recite them in prayer and to enable us to understand their meanings. The first surah is what we call the mother of the book, or Surah Al Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, which we as Muslims are required to recite in every rak'ah of the 17 rak'ahs per day. All the 5 daily prayers, all the daily prayers that we are required to pray, we are required to recite Al Fatiha in each and every rak'ah of these. Surah Al Fatiha is considered to be the map of the Quran, the key to understand the Quran. The Quran has 114 surahs. One of them is Al Fatiha, and the other 113 surahs are in fact a kind of expansion of Al Fatiha. Surah Al Fatiha talks to us about 4 important things. One, about God and the fact that God exists and that to Him belongs everything. And the second is the way to relate to God. And third, talks to us about virtue and the essence of virtue. And the fourth thing is, how can we practice virtue in our life? In fact, this summarizes whole life. This summarizes a good life. A good life is a life that has a purpose and that shows people how can they relate to this purpose. It's a life that has virtue, in which our relationships with people are governed, and how can we conduct this virtue in life. So Surah Al Fatiha, in 7 verses only, speak about these themes in such a subtle but clear and amazing way. It starts by stating that God is the merciful and the ever merciful. These are 2 important key attributes of God, that He is the merciful and that His mercy is magnificent, that it is not given to one group and not to the other group. It encompasses everything and everyone. His mercy encompasses people in this life and in the afterlife. His mercy is mixed with His gentleness and kindness, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, it continues to tell us that God is the merciful and the ever merciful, that He is the Lord of mankind, that He is the owner of the Day of Judgment, that on Judgment Day we will be standing in front of God. And all of these attributes require a duty. So what is our duty towards God? The duty towards God is stated in the first verse as well, that we should praise Him and we should turn to Him for help and we should turn to Him for guidance. So that states the presence of God in our life, and that our duty towards God is to seek His help, to seek His guidance, and to worship Him, to turn to Him with our dedication. And then in the second half of the surah, it talks to us about a very important issue, which is how can we run a good life with people, that is a life of virtue, respecting people and looking after them and being true men of God, being true manifestations of the attributes of God. But how can we be true manifestations of the attributes of God? That is by following those whom God has favored. What do you mean by those whom God has favored? God does not favor anyone, but by following those whom God has bestowed upon the ability to follow and to abide and to stick to these virtues. Those who have manifested God's attributes in their lives, following good examples, following good people, will become good people. For people learn from people. People learn from human examples. So we ask God, after we have realized His presence in our life, realized His attributes, realized our duty to asking Him for guidance and help and assistance, we ask Him to give us a life of virtue by making us follow the example of those who have lived a life of virtue. This is chapter 1, Surah Al Fatiha, which we will recite after introducing the following 3 chapters. The last 3 chapters of the Quran, sometimes we know them with this title, the 3 quls, because each one of them starts with the word qul, say. These 3 surahs, one of them is known as Surah Al Ikhlas, or Surah on Sincerity, that talks about the attributes of God and gives us the essential attributes of God. That God is one, He is not composed of parts, there is only one God, there cannot be more than one God, otherwise the whole world will be in chaos. That since He is the one, and He is unlimited, and to Him belongs all attributes of perfection in a way that we cannot even imagine. Therefore, any human attribute cannot be applied to God. Otherwise, we will end up being anthropomorphists. Anthropomorphism is to ascribe attributes of human beings to God, and that is wrong, because God is not a human, God is not limited, and therefore we cannot ascribe to God a father or a mother or a son or a daughter or a wife or a friend. God is God. To Him belongs all perfection, and our duty towards God is to turn to Him in case we need anything, in case we seek any help, in case we are fearful of anything. We have to relate to God. This surah, known as Surah Al Ikhlas, or the Surah on Sincerity, summarizes the essentials about God. The following surah and the surah after talks to us about 2 important themes as well. One of them is to seek refuge in God from anything that threatens us, from anything that casts fear in our hearts, from those who envy us for the blessings of God, from those who try to harm us by using any power, spiritual or non-spiritual, by magicians, seeking refuge in God from magicians, from soothsayers, from fortune tellers, from harmful individuals, and from harmful insects, and from harmful beings in any form or shape. To seek refuge in God at all times and spaces, in the morning and in the evening, during the day, in our sleep, to feel and to live this companionship of the teachings of God in every situation of our life. And then finally, the last surah of the Quran, which is known as Surah An-Nas, or the surah of mankind, talks to us about seeking refuge in God from human beings, from whispers of human beings, because it is very dangerous sometimes for people to be in the company. It's actually always dangerous to be in the company of the wrong people, because they will whisper to us in a devilish way that destroy our lives, that take us away from God. And the surah says that we should seek refuge in God from any whispers of human beings, from any insinuations of human beings, from bad people that take us away from God. These 3 surahs, Surah on Sincerity, Surah on the Dawn, which relate us to seeking refuge in God at all times, and third, Surah An-Nas, or Surah of Mankind, which relate us to seeking refuge in God from every harmful individual, are very important and essential for people to memorize and try to reflect on and read in their prayer.